Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the Amazing Seller Podcast. This is episode number 737. My name is Scott Volker, and I'm here to help you build a future-proof business and create your ultimate freedom. But, and there's always a but, right? Well, it's up to you to take this information from this show and take action and become the amazing seller of your life. So, if you're ready, I'm ready. Let's do this. All right, so in today's episode, this is going to be a little bit different. This is something I've never discussed before on the podcast. Now, I've talked a little bit about it, but I never went into all of the details. And now that we're about 10 months in, I thought it was about time. Plus, some of you have been reaching out to me saying, Scott, what about this Airbnb thing? Like, how's that going? And, would you do it again? And what's your future plans? And why would you do it? So all of those questions, and even like what it costs to get involved in this part of the market, because Airbnb, it's a wide market. There's all different types that you can do. I actually niched it down so it was more of a high level or a luxury Airbnb on the water, on the lake. And I talk all about that in this episode, but I also go into what it took to really get this thing up and running and some of the struggles, but then also what I want to do moving forward in the next 3 to 5 years with these, now that I've kind of gotten my feet wet. And the other thing I want to say here before we jump in, and I'm actually going to have a guest come on here, and we're going to dig into this. And the guest that I'm having on, his name is Dustin Heiner. I met him at Pat Flynn's event, and he's actually a real estate expert. And, he's been doing it for a while. He's got over 30 properties right now. So when I met him, I actually was introduced to him by a friend of mine that was there and said, hey, you got to talk to this guy. And I asked him, I said, hey, would you want to jump on a podcast and just kind of deep dive into what I'm doing, and then I can pick your brain, because I want to be able to leverage more money so I could do more of these. And is this even a smart move? And what does it look like for the next 3 to 5 years if I want to actually do what I want to do? So we're going to dig into all of that. He's also going to give us some different ways that we could actually do this if we wanted to, without starting right off the bat with a lake house, if we wanted to work ourselves up to that. Now, the reason why also that I want to talk about this is because a lot of people ask me, Scott, what do you do when you have profits and you want to reinvest them in something? Is it always back into the business? And the answer is no, it shouldn't be. I mean, yes, you want to invest back in the business so you can grow it. But when you have surplus outside of that, you could be investing it in something, and you should be, into something that doesn't rely on that business, right? Because we want stuff that is out there, some investments that will just keep producing even if we don't, or even if we're not involved. That was my main goal here, is like, if I'm going to do this, I want it to have a return, but I also want it to be something that's operating without me being involved. This podcast, the only way that it goes on is if I keep showing up here on the mic and producing these episodes, right? So that's not really something that I could walk away from, not something that I could technically sell. Now, the brand that I'm building with my partner, yes, that is something that we could sell. But one little caveat here is, in the beginning, my partner was the face of the brand. We're actually moving away from that now after talking to Joe Valley. So this way here, it's more sellable. So we can go out there and not have it be dependent on one person. And actually, the way that we're doing that is we're having contributors come in and starting to add content and starting to be more of the spokesperson or people for the brand. So that's how you can do that if you're already up and running and you are the face. But if you are the face, that's fine. Just understand that it's going to be a little bit harder to sell that brand. But in this case, I wanted to have something that was operating without me being involved. The other cool thing is, I'm not going to share all the details right now on this, but I have a way that I've been playing around in the background with building really real estate online. And so this way here, eventually I could have those producing income without me being involved. And I'll share more about that at another time. But in this episode, we're going to be deep diving in this area of Airbnb. But really, I want you guys to also remember this. This project, this venture is something that I wasn't considering doing 15 months ago, right? The book that I wrote, The Take Action Effect, that was something that I wasn't thinking about doing 15 months ago either. But here we are. Both of those projects are done and released out into the wild. And the reason why I'm sharing that with you is because there's a lot of things that you might not even be anticipating right now, but will come your way. And once they do, that becomes part of your story. And inside of my book, The Take Action Effect, this is exactly what I mean when we're building out that timeline. There's things that you're doing now that will lead you to that other thing. And you're going to hear in this interview that I did with Dustin, and he kind of picks my brain a little bit about like where this all came from and where I want to go. And so it's really interesting, but I thought it would make a good podcast episode for you guys that are just, again, thinking to themselves, man, I got to have this all figured out. Like, I'm not going to be able to do that. Well, don't say that. All right. Do not say that. And again, if you have not picked up a copy of my book, The Take Action Effect, you probably want to do so, because this here will make so much sense. And now that I've wrote the book, if I added a new update to the book, there'd be 2 more things in the book. One would be the creation of the book, right? Because that wasn't on the radar in the beginning of the book. It was kind of in its beginning stages. And now where's that going to lead, right? And then the other thing was this Airbnb thing. That wasn't really in the mix. It was about halfway through, but it kind of showed itself to me, and I acted on it. I took action. And now, well, we'll see where this leads. So the book really, really allows you to see this, okay, for yourself, and really go back in time and see where you've come and where you're going. But then how to take your skill sets and build upon them, and really then double down on your current business or your current venture. And in this case, it's probably for you building your online business. So again, I can go on and on and on about these take action moments. And that was 2 of them that are fairly new that we're going to see where they lead. All right. So again, if you haven't grabbed the book, go do so. TakeActionEffect.com. And the other thing I'd like you to do is, because we all have them, I want to hear, what is one of your take action moments in your life that has changed your life in one way, shape, or form? I want you to, once you grab the book, that would be amazing. You take a picture with it and then post it on social, #TakeActionMoment, and let me know, what is a take action moment that you've had in your life that has changed your life in one way, shape, or form? I'd love to hear your story. All right. So with that all being said, guys, let's go ahead and dig in with this conversation that I had with my good new friend, Dustin Heiner. Enjoy. Well, hey, Dustin, what's up, man? Thank you for coming on the podcast. What's going on? How you doing?
Great, Scott. Thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to be here with you.
Yeah, no, this is going to be exciting. And, I met you at Pat Flynn's event, actually, a few months back. And actually, David, another mutual friend of ours, introduced you and I. And he's like, oh, you got to talk to Dustin. He's the real estate guy. And I'm like, real estate guy? Bring him over, So we got jamming on that. But, and just to let people know, like, I wanted to have Dustin on to really talk about not just real estate in general, but really how to diversify your income. And so it's not just, relying on one source. I think we all know diversification means everything, and that's in your business, but also outside of your business. So before we do that, give us a little background on Dustin. Who's Dustin? What you up to? And how did you even get into this?
Yeah. So I've been entrepreneurial my whole life. Like I had a paper route when I was 13 years old.
Hey, me too.
And so I from that, I started to think, I eventually just want to work for myself. My dad was an entrepreneur. My stepdad was an entrepreneur. And my mom was a normal employee. But anyways, long story short, I started thinking I wanted to basically get out of basically didn't want to work for somebody else.
Sure.
And little by little, first I got my first job at Walmart, and I realized how horrible it was, because number one, somebody's telling you what to do. Number two, you had to be there whenever they tell you to be there. Number three, they take out so much money, or the government takes out so much money. So I said, there's got to be a better way. So fast forward with many of the businesses, like a graphic website design company, a skateboard manufacturing, a longboard skateboard manufacturing company, a commercial real estate, not real estate, retail establishment as a convenience store, and a pizzeria. I had so many businesses. And then because I wanted to quit my job. And so I got married. We started having kids. Everything's going great, but I still had my full-time job, working 40 plus hours a week, and all these other types of businesses that were running on, even had my retail establishment at the same time. And I said, let me dabble in real estate. So I had so many businesses, but I wanted to make sure I was not really diversified, but I want to see how I can make money. And then at the best, whichever best way is going to, stick, I'm going to go with that. And so fast forward now, I've been married 13 years now. We have 4 kids. We travel all over the world. And it's because I bought property after property, all the businesses, all the harder businesses like having employees or manufacturing, like all this sort of stuff was a lot of work. And the one that was the easiest and the best, I literally only work 30 minutes a month, is owning a rental property. And so all the other, I still have plenty of other businesses, but real estate is really what allows me. I have the luxury of putting so much time into other businesses because all my money is coming in from real estate, which I don't even do any work. And it frees me up to do other work on my other businesses.
Yeah, I love that. And, because I shared this story with you, I recently got into the Airbnb market and purchased a lake house, and we can go into that story because I haven't really shared too much details. I've told people a little bit about it, but I'd like to let people know a little bit more of the inner workings there, how it's been going now that it's been live for 2 months and starting to see money come back after we dumped a whole bunch of money into it and that whole process. But like for people that are, again, diversifying, I think revenue streams is key, but what a lot of people don't understand, I think, and it's because you're so focused on, like you were trying to like create this business to free me from my job. How do you ever think about creating an additional revenue stream that you're like, I can't even get my first one running? But I think to switch that mindset a little bit, because right now that's where I am. I'm like, how do I create stuff that will work without me needing to be involved? Right? This podcast, if I go away, it goes away. Right? And you have a podcast, so you know how that works. But like, so let's kind of just touch on that, and then we can dive deep into that. But before we do that, what's your first property? Do you remember your first property and how you acquired it and how that deal went? And do you still own that property? Give us a little bit of that first property.
That's a great question. So I have 30 plus properties now, and I don't remember every one, but I remember the names after, I look at the statement, I remember the names. Oh, I know that one and that one. But the first one, so I have 30 plus properties. The first one is the only one I ever saw. So out of all the 30 properties, I've only seen one, and it was before I bought it. So I was really nervous. We just got married. My wife and I just got married, and I took our entire savings and I said, babe, I want to buy a rental property. Well, I was living in California, and it was in 2006. Wow. Okay. 2006 prices are up. I mean, they're skyrocketing. This is before the crash. And I knew that if I bought in California, number one, I wouldn't make any money. Number two, I'd be paying up the wazoo. Number three, I don't have the money to pay or to buy it. Right. So I flew to Ohio, flew all the way to Ohio, found a city that had it's more of an economically depressed market. So the prices were lower, but I still was able to rent out the property for a fairly good amount. So comparative to how much I was putting in. So here's the very first deal. I took $17,000. So I didn't have any debt, I didn't have any debt, but I didn't have any money. Okay. I was living paycheck to paycheck and just kind of like making sure I didn't have debt, but paid, spent all my money. My wife brought in a little bit of money, and then we started saving more. And then with our when we got married, we got a little bit of presents. Yeah. I took $17,000, was in Ohio, looked at a number of properties. I found one. I said, you know what? I'm going to put an offer on it. Put an offer in it. It was literally $17,000 cash, no mortgage. It was all said and done. So I own it free and clear, and I still own it free and clear today. So for $17,000 cash, I bought it, and then I think it rents for $550, so $550 now. So I've held it since 2006 or 2007-ish. And so what's that, 12 years? So I've at least doubled or tripled my money on how much I put in the property, if not more, buying the property. So from there, I just kept buying more and more after that. I realized, like all these other businesses, I had so much overhead with employees and so much expenses. And then I realized, man, one property, I spent $17,000. I would get from my property manager like $350 check or a $400 check just from that one property. I said, no, I didn't do anything. How do I get more of these? And so I just kept doing that over and over again. Okay.
So you bought your first one. So that one there is you bought it free and clear. So 17 grand. And we had I'm from upstate New York. So there was some areas and I mean, I think every area has those depressed areas, right? Or, that are just not the greatest, but you can buy houses for inexpensive price. My thing always with that was like, oh man, like I'm managing it, right? Like, and then like, I don't want to go into that area. I mean, I don't even want to like drive in that area, right? Like I just don't want to. I don't want it when a plumbing leak happens or whatever. I know I could call someone, but then that dips into my net. What was did you have like the numbers ran before you went into that deal, or what did you learn from that first deal that you're like, my next one, make sure I don't do that?
That's a great question. So In economically depressed areas where you're going to have tenants that are more lower class, they don't have much money. I mean, if somebody can't save up $17,000 to buy a house and they're still renting, there's something, issue. So in certain areas, these are like D class properties that's the only one I can get was a D class property. Yeah. There are certain ways to run the business in order to make sure your cash flow stays consistent and that you're making money as opposed to losing money. I had to figure that out over the long term. So basically what I did, one of your party questions was running the numbers. Sure. So that's what I love about real estate is I can run the numbers and make sure all my expenses are lined up. Now there will be some things that might pop up, like a furnace goes out or something like that, but I pad that in, which is called capital reserves and repairs. But anyways, so I make sure all my expenses are lined up and I calculate how everything that I'm going to have for expenses and including taxes, property manager, insurance. So here's a funny thing. I don't pay property managers. I don't pay taxes. I don't pay my insurance. I personally don't. My tenants pay those. Right. It's so amazing that I get money, they pay those expenses, and then so income and expenses, that gap right there is what goes in my pocket. That's what allows me to live my life and do whatever I want. So lessons that I learned are really how to actually manage a D class area, and that translated into a C, a B, and A. If you don't know what the classes are, classes are basically that certain types of homes are like this is D would be obviously if you get a grade in school, a D is a lower, C, B, A. So that's how it works out. But with these D class properties, you need to learn how to manage them well, treat it like a business so that you make money. There's always a sob story like, oh, my car got stolen or somebody broke into my car. Wait, you just said it got stolen. How'd they break it in? It's still like the next month. There's so many stories, but you had to learn how to, and I've actually written a ton about all this stuff because I learned so many lessons because my income was like this, like this, like this, like this, and like this. And so what I had to do was make it this way, and I had to implement certain business rules. But the biggest thing is I don't want to drive there because I lived in California. I didn't want to drive to Ohio or fly to Ohio and fix things. Right. So I hired a property manager. And if the manager, here's a big key. If the manager is not willing to manage a property in whatever area that you're going to be investing, then it's probably not worth buying because you can't manage it. You'd have to do it yourself. Right. And so there are certain areas of the country where you can't find a property manager. Then if that's the case, then you probably should move on. But yeah, for me, it was a stepping stone to get, to $40,000, $50,000 homes, then eventually $200,000 homes. I personally don't go above maybe 200,000 is the top because above that, you're just paying a lot more money and not getting a big return.
Okay. So speaking of that, I'll give you a little bit of my backstory on the rental. I owned a rental property. Actually, I owned two. One of them was my father-in-law passed away when he was 56 years old. Cancer, terrible. And he left my wife a piece of land, about 2 acres, which we ended up building our home on. And then also he had a home that was next to it, a little ranch. It was about 1,200 square foot. So we ended up, I moved into that house when we were building my other house. It was convenient because it was right there. But then we rented the house out. So we rented it out. And the very first tenant that we had, we had to evict them. And in New York, I don't know where it is or what it's like in other areas, but in New York, we had no rights to go in there until about 90 days when the sheriff pulled up. Because I tried it. I went in actually when they were gone. I went in, I changed the locks and all this stuff. And the cops come over and go, you can't do that, man. You can't go. I'm like, what are you talking about? It's my house. And they're like, you just can't. It's a civil case. We can't even get involved till the sheriff comes out. And I'm like, you're kidding me. So I have this. They're not paying me rent. I got to pay the taxes. I got to pay all this stuff. And they're not being able. So that gave me a really bad taste in my mouth. But I did it. I learned through that lesson and everything, right? So then we went out and we finally got him evicted. About $2,000-$3,000 worth of damage. Insurance covered it. That was great, but it was still a hassle. And then from there, we rented it out to someone else, and that was okay. Then they left, and then I had a tenant that came in that was phenomenal. I ended up selling the house to them when I moved here to South Carolina, but she was great. But great. But yeah, I lucked out on that. But the problem I seen with that, this is my own thing, is I was like, okay, my net every single month isn't that much. I mean, let's call it $300-$400. Okay. And the house is being paid down. We all know that, right? It had a small mortgage on it. It's being paid down. It's getting some equity depending on the area. So, it may go up a little bit. It may stay the same depending on the area if it's going down. And so that gave me a bad taste in my mouth. So I was like, you know what? I'm out of this real estate game. I'm not doing it, right? I'm selling it. I don't want the headaches. I'd get a phone call. I would dread the phone call. Now, fast forward, I found a new model that I like even better, and that's what I'm going to talk to you about, and that's the Airbnb space. And I've already seen it. I've only had like 2 months of experience here with this right now, but I'll tell you what, it's pretty nice, but there are bigger money involved here. You know what I mean? And we have like a different type of class. This is like probably an A or an A plus class. We're talking like someone that can afford $6,000 a week to stay in your home. So let's walk through that. So my thing about like having these houses where I'm only making, how much do you want to make on a deal that makes you feel like I'm safe? You know, like now moving forward, like if you had some money to invest right now, if someone had a business and they're like, I want to take some of my extra money and I want to invest it in real estate, where would you tell that person to go?
I would tell, well, if they're wanting to get started, there's obviously A all the way down to D class properties. Sure. What I would say is, let's look at where you're starting from. Like if you have very little money, or if you have more money, if you have a lot of money, like we need to look at where you're starting from, but then also look at your goals. Where do you want to get to? And we can map out a plan there. But let's just give round numbers. Let's say somebody has a decent sized business and they said, you know what? I was listening to Dustin Scott, and real estate might be a good way to go. And so if it's a good way to go, let's look at saying, okay, where you're coming from. If you have let's say you have $100,000 saved up, that's a lot of money, but if you have $100,000 saved up, more than likely I can help you, or I can show you how to get properties in the Midwest just to get started, to get your feet wet. I can show you how to get at least 2, maybe 3 properties with that $100,000 that are making you a minimum of $250 or more each month. And when you ask the question, like, what do you shoot for? I always tell all my students, shoot for a minimum. That's the rock bottom of $250 of passive income every single month. And what I love about rental properties is you really don't have to be that smart. It's addition and subtraction and a little bit of multiplication. So you got income minus your expenses. That's the profit right there. And then you just multiply it. So if you have one property making $250 a month, you get 10 properties, that's $2,500 a month. It's 20 properties, that's $5,000 a month. And so you just keep growing up from there. Now it's more like the economies of scale. The more you get, the easier it gets for you. I literally haven't written a check and paid a contract or anything in like years, because all my properties, all the money that brings in, all the expenses get paid out from the profit that I'm getting in. Okay. So if somebody's looking to get started, what I would suggest is looking outside of the area that you live in, because I wouldn't say that it's a problem to invest in New York or even Washington, D.C. or San Francisco. You just don't you have to have a different business model, which is what we'll get to in just a second about being Airbnb. But what you can do is when you have a rental property, you actually make money 6 different ways. So we'll go through them. So you make money with passive income. So every single month, $250 or more every single month. Number one is that. Number 2 is you equity capture. So when you buy the property, you want to be an investor. You buy it low and you sell high if you ever sell it. So you capture equity. So you buy a $100,000 house, but you pay $80,000 for it. Well, you captured $20,000. There's forced appreciation, where you fix it up. You put paint on the walls, you fix the carpet or whatever, and you make the value of the property go up. There's also market appreciation. Just in general, the market goes up. There's also, and I love this one, you mentioned this earlier, this is next to the cash flow. This is one of my favorites, is where the tenant pays down your debt for you. So, and your interest, the principal and interest. So if you buy a $100,000 house, if you get an FHA loan, which is 3.5% down, you're only in $3,500. But then you pay, you have a balance of $96,500. The beautiful thing is you get interest, but your tenant pays that interest, pays the principal that you pay. They pay the rest of it for you. And the last one is tax advantages. You get so many, like owning a business is great, but having real estate is even more, because it's a business too, but you have more tax advantages. So all that to say, Scott, with your investing in New York, you were blessed with the property, which is fantastic. Now, if somebody doesn't have that ability to have that property, what I would suggest is look outside your area. I was living in California and I realized I couldn't buy and make money, so I went out of state. And that's something I love to do, is I love to show so many people, or basically everybody, you don't have to invest in your backyard or even like 10 miles around you. You can invest thousands of miles away and you have property managers do the work for you. So I know we want to talk about your Airbnb. So let's talk about, so tell me a little bit about the deal. How did you find it? What did you buy it for? If you're willing to talk about that, and then we can get into it.
Yeah. And I've never shared this either, by the way. So I'm going to share it here on air. And I have no problem doing that because it's taken a long time to get to this point. So I just want people to understand too, that depending on where you are and what you're willing to risk or put into the deal is totally up to you. Kind of, I want to give a little bit of a backstory. So how this even happened. So I basically run masterminds, I run workshops, and I wanted a place that I could host these. And so I started looking at lake houses in this area. So now I'm in South Carolina now. Actually, the house is in North Carolina. I'm literally 30 minutes from Charlotte. So there's a lake called Lake Norman. So I was looking at Lake Norman, and I said, you know what, this looks like a great lake. I would love to have a retreat there, or a mastermind, or a workshop. So let's go ahead and see what these are going to cost me. So I started looking at properties, and they were anywhere from $6,000 to $12,000 to rent it for a week. I'm like, holy crap, like that's a lot of money. But these are high level people. I'm willing to invest that in that, and they're going to be paying to attend this, so it all balances out, and it'll be a beautiful place. So then I started thinking, as the entrepreneur, I'm like, damn, that's a lot of money to be spending on that. I imagine if I could get into this market, like what, that would be crazy. So I started looking at properties, but the person that I was reaching out to that was offering these for sale, I actually struck up a conversation with him, and then he's like, if you want to get in the game, I'd be more than happy to sit down with you. And I'm like, okay. Now this guy came over from Australia 5 years ago, and he's built this little mini empire where all he focuses on is high level lakefront properties. That's it. That's his niche. He doesn't do anything other than that. So, I mean, every house that he has is probably a minimum of, I would say, $1 million. So it's anywhere from $1 million to probably 2.5, 3 million. And so he did 5 of these himself. But then what happened was he started to see that there was a market for people to manage these properties. So someone like me comes in, I give him a piece of real estate, which is his inventory now. He locks me up for a 2-year deal. He's making money, but he takes care of everything. I'm talking everything from SEO to Facebook ads, retargeting, like all of that. I mean, he actually outranks Airbnb, the actual main site. So he actually outranks them. So yeah, so he spent a ton of money on that too. The guy's he's not afraid to spend money. So he did all this stuff. So I got talking to him. So then I started looking at deals. And he gave me a whole pro forma of like what it would make, and here's the slow months, here's from the past 5 years. He gave me all of the numbers, so I'm looking at like black and white. Now he's like, don't think you're going to get these year 1. It might be like year 2, year 3, but I do guarantee that you're going to be able to pay for the property. And I'm like, okay, well that's a no brainer. So that's how we struck the deal. So then I ended up finding a house that he actually that he had found, and he said this would make a perfect. Now again, I'm in like validation, like in my business, right? Like, so if I'm going to launch a product, if I'm going to launch a business, I want to validate it. I want to know the area. So even if I didn't use him, I'm going to use where his houses are to tell me that there's people actually wanting to rent there. Right. So I used him as a validation. So anyone listening right now, it's the same thing as like, if I want to see if a product's selling well, I go to Amazon, I see if people are buying it. I see the reviews. It kind of validates that people want this product. Same idea, just at a different scale. So anyway, I said, you know what? Instead of reinvent the wheel here, let's just kind of roll with this guy and see what happens. And he's going to take care of it. His blue sky in this whole thing is me buying a house and giving it to him to rent. He only makes money if he rents it. So I'm like, okay. So anyway, so we found a house, and I believe it was like about 860 grand was the price tag. The house was and actually a deal fell through because they had a family emergency that they had to back out of the deal. That's the only reason why this deal came back. The house was probably about a $900,000 home, right on the water, lakefront. I mean, literally right there. And I'm like, man, this is like a huge investment. This is more than my house, right? Like, like, this is crazy, right? And I'm like, but man, the numbers are kind of making sense. But then we had to do a full renovation. So the renovation, to make it up to speed, because he doesn't just list anything. It's got to meet his expectations and his clients' expectations. It's got to be high end. It's got to have certain look, a certain feel, a certain location, all of that stuff. So, and I mean, at the end of the day, we're about $1 million, probably 50,000 in it. So just say a little bit over $1 million in it. Okay. So went out, leveraged some money, right? But I took money out of my own pocket as a down payment.
20% down?
We did 20. Yep.
Okay.
20%. And then from there, I put probably about 100 grand of my own out of my own pocket for the rent out.
Making it look as awesome as it is.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So anyway, so that process was only supposed to take 4 months. It ended up taking 6. So already Scott's in the hole for 2 months.
Yep.
Okay. 2 months that almost was peak. Actually, it was in about, we went live in June, middle of June. And from there, we ended up, we rented out for 2 weeks there, which actually paid pretty much for the entire property. So basically, all in, I got to have about $5,000 a month to cover costs. Okay. So I'll give you a little backstory on what's happened so far. We rented it out for basically 2 weeks in June, and we brought in, after management fees and all of the fees, I think we brought in around $6,000.
That's awesome. For 2 weeks, you said?
For 2 weeks.
Wow.
Right. And then in July, we brought in net. There was other expenses like startup costs. Like we had pictures taken from professional photographer. Everything in an Airbnb has to be fully stocked. Right? Everything's got to be there. You need towels. You need everything's got to be there, like a hotel. Soaps and all kinds of stuff in the pantries, like all these things. You need special locks on the doors so the tenants can't get in there. Like all of this stuff. So we probably spent $4,000 or $5,000 just on startup costs to get that thing ready to go. All right. So we had to buy 2 kayaks for out there so people could go do kayaking. There's a boat dock. We don't have a boat, but we have the boat dock. So all of that stuff. So then in July, I netted in my pocket. I say netted, it's still, I'm still in the hole, right? Because I've invested money, but the cost now, I put in $13,000 in my pocket. Okay. That's basically that's July. And then in August, we did just under 15. Now that's after management costs, all that, right? Now out of that, I got to pay my $5,000. So let's just say I netted 10, right? But here's the deal. Here's how I'm thinking. Well, moving forward here, some of these months might not be full. So I need to take that money, set it aside. And if I have a rainy day, then I got to pay for it there. So that's my mindset. It's not like, oh, I made this money, I'm going to do this. But the house has been paid for. And it's funny, another little funny story here. The guy that sold me the house, he reached back out to me. He goes, hey man, the house looks freaking amazing. Like I've seen the pictures. You did an awesome job. And he goes, the money's probably pouring in now. I go, well, it's coming in, but dude, I'm still in the hole. You know what I mean? I've launched physical products brands. I've launched digital product brands. I've never had this much of a startup cost. Like this is crazy, right? It's a little hard to get used to. And he says to me, he goes, well, if this makes you feel any better, he goes, I just sold a house probably around a quarter mile from where you are. And your house is nicer on a better lot. And I sold it for $1.3 million. Now I could possibly, he said, I'm taking his word for it. He said, if I was to list your property right now, I could probably have it sold in 2 to 3 weeks for probably $1.3 million. So I would, if I just wanted to wipe my hands of it, I could probably do that and probably make $150,000 to $200,000 on that deal. But because the location of where it is and the premium property is so limited, so that's where I'm at, man. So what's your thoughts on all that?
So number one, I think it's fantastic. What's great about Airbnb, VRBO, these types of websites that are allowing you to rent it out per day as opposed to per month, you make a killing. There's a reason why hotels make so much money, and there are so many of them because they rent it out per day. So here's basically the way it works out. If you have a regular house that you're going to be renting out for, let's say, $1,500 a month, it's a normal, 3-bedroom, 2-bath, $200,000 you would buy it for. And so you're going to rent it out for $1,500 a month. Well, if you rent it out for $100 a day, as opposed to $1,500 a month, well, that's $3,000 instead of $1,500.
Right.
So it's being able to have a premium product, which is what yours. I saw the pictures. I mean, it looks phenomenal. Yeah. It's a premium product. You put all the necessities that not just necessities, but even extra like luxury things like the kayaks, like you said. That's brilliant. And what I love about what you did was you talked to the property manager. And so what I always tell basically everybody is, the hard part is building the business first. The easy thing is buying the property. Anybody can just buy a property. There's millions of them all over the country. Right. But the hard thing is to build the business first. And the way you do that is by, number one, finding the right property manager and then hiring them to actually give you insights into what needs to be in the property, what doesn't. Should you fix it up like this, or should you do this, or buy kayaks? Is that going to get more of a premium? So you did it right by building the business first, having the property manager tell you, if you want to get this, this, and this, and this, or if you basically want to make a lot of money, you need to put this much money into it, but it's coming back in return. So not everybody has, you're blessed to have that much money, that ability to get into it, but you don't have to buy the lake houses in order to do Airbnb. No. Even places like, so just recently, I went to Orlando, Florida. I had a podcast movement conference there in August. And then I had another conference in Washington, D.C. And a month later. So because I have rental properties, I just travel. So here's basically what happened was we started from Orlando, drove all the way up to New York City, then came back to Washington, D.C., and then flew back to Phoenix. So Phoenix, Orlando, drove, and then Washington, D.C., flew back. But in that time, we stayed at Airbnb all over. And so we didn't stay at big cities all the time. And so even if it's a big city, or if it's on the lake, if it's on the ocean, if it's rural, Airbnb works really, really well. And it's getting so much more popular. But here's the key. You're renting out per day. That's why you can make so much money. I bet if you wanted to rent it out per month, you might make $6,000 probably, maybe $7,000.
Right.
And so now you're making so much more because it's a luxury item. And it's somebody saying, man, this is not my house. Most people think I'm used to paying an X dollar amount for my mortgage. But when they go on vacation, like, hey, we're on vacation. This is an amazing place. Let's spend more money.
Right. Right. Yeah. No, and that's what lit me up. Now, the other thing is, a little side note here, is when I was starting to do this on the side, before I really got involved with this guy, I also started being worried about, like, some areas and districts don't allow Airbnb. So that's something else that could have came up and it could have hooked me. Right. But again, I said, you know what, this guy, he knows it. I'm either going to buy in the same neighborhood as him, right? Because he's already validated that, or I'm going to partner with this guy. Because I look at this guy as like a partner, right? He wants me to succeed, because if I succeed, my property's his property.
Yep.
And for every $20,000 that house brings in, he's going to get $5,000. Like, so he's good with it. Like, all his resources are dialed in. So he's double dipped in a sense. He's got 5 of his own properties. He did 1 a year since he's been here. And then he built this management company that now he's getting people like me to come in and add inventory that doesn't cost him anything, and he just makes money on the back end, but he's got his systems in place. So it is brilliant. But the other part of this that I really liked that was exciting was, I've got a lake house now that if I want to go up there and it's not being rented, I can go up there and enjoy it, right? So now I wouldn't just buy that lake house to go and just enjoy it, because it's a lot of money. I wouldn't be that type of guy. I don't need that. It's nice, but I wouldn't need it. I'd rent it like an Airbnb, like I'm doing, right? Because I wouldn't want that huge expense every single month. The other thing is because I am in the business that I am, like, I plan on doing workshops there and masterminds and stuff. So people will pay money to come to this, to work with me privately in a small environment, and we'll get to enjoy the house together. And then I can rent it out as an Airbnb. So those are the 3 lines that I'm looking at when I convinced myself that, holy crap, are we really going to do this? And I'll tell you what, Dustin, like, I questioned myself all the way up to the time that we rented. I'm like, did I make the right thing? What am I doing? Like, all that stuff creeps into your head, And
I quickly want to touch on what you said at the very, very beginning, is creating automatic businesses. Now, that's the only type of business that I create now. Even I'm starting a gym, and it's going to be an automatic gym. Basically, I'm not even have to be there. I can live in another state and it'll still work. But every single business that I create, I'm trying to make it as automated as possible, so I physically do not have to do any work. And so what I love to do is, in talking to people like you, Scott, and say, okay, what's your business like? What are you doing? And here's the thing. Now, before I get to that, let me ask you a question. Did you buy the house in another company, or did you put it under your brand?
I did not put it under my brand. And so it's its own separate thing as of right now.
That's brilliant. That's absolutely the way to go.
I did not put it under this brand. I basically just had its own entity.
You absolutely need to do that. So along with making businesses, for me, what I try to do, along with making them as automated as possible, so I don't have to be there, I try to see how every single way that I can make money, even making money from myself. And so I'll give you quickly, and this goes in exactly what you did with your property. So in the gym that I'm creating, hopefully it's going to be a 24-hour gym. It's going to be like a CrossFit gym, but not like a global gym. It's not going to be classes. So I have my whole business model. And I've seen it work other places, so I'm going to implement it. So this is the way it's going to work out. This is how I'm going to make more money. Just having one location, I make money. But let me walk it through. So one location, if I have one business that's running the one location, that's one company. Every other company that I get, 6, 7, 8, they're going to be another company. If I franchise, every single one's going to be another company. Then there's going to be the franchise arm, the company that owns all of this and owns all the franchise. And then I'm going to have the real estate arm that owns all the real estate. So all these different companies, each one hopefully paying into the other. And in the end, the real estate, if I want to sell the business, I still have the real estate. That's what I love. I absolutely love real estate. Business is just a way to make money. And if you know much about McDonald's, there was a story, basically the Ray Kroc went into like a business school, and he said, all right, everybody, what business am I in? Like, what do I do as a business at McDonald's? And everybody said, well, hamburgers or milkshakes or whatever. He says, no, none of that. I'm in the real estate business. I buy land and I give somebody a business that they can pay me rent. That's where I make money. So they're one of the biggest real estate holders in the world, and that's their business is real estate. So I love how you have the business that's paying into itself, and you can continually do that and make it automatic and paying, instead of paying somebody else, you're paying yourself. So I think it's a brilliant business model.
Yeah, it's interesting. And I mean, the only reason why I even did this was because I had the management company in place. If I didn't have that, I would not want it, because already I can see my statement. There was a plumbing issue and it says there, I was billed for it, but I never heard about it. I just seen a line item. I'm like, oh, plumber came, whatever, fix this, whatever. So I don't ever see that. And it's funny, my wife and I, we always do business together whenever we have these ideas. And she was like, maybe we should do our own management company. And I'm like, that's a good idea, but it's a whole nother business. And there's a whole bunch of other moving parts. And she's like, yeah, but we're paying them like this. And I go, yes, but listen, we have not heard from them. Right. So
absolutely,
I like that. So now, does my brain start to crank a little bit and go, wow, that'd be a good business model to let other people do what this guy's doing, maybe in a different area. But
Scott, I love that thinking, how to create more businesses and stuff. So remember, this is my thinking. This is why I don't do property management. I hate even the thought of trying to do managing properties. Is that's a heavily labor intensive, heavily time intensive business. Now, if you want to create it and you like it, plus you got to deal with tenants, you got to deal with all these, customer service. I want to not have to do that. So I'm completely fine with paying somebody a lot of money, as long as I'm making even more money 100%. So that they do all the work. So I have nothing to do with the property. But you hit the nail absolutely on the head. You had the property manager. You basically had the business, the idea of the business structure, the business model already proven someplace else, which is what I love. I love everybody else, lose money and then, they start making money. Okay, I'll jump on it now. And so you had the property manager. See, I was going to invest in Springfield, Illinois after I started in Ohio. I'm branching out. So right now I invest in Texas, Ohio, and Arizona. Okay. And so I wanted to go to Illinois. And I flew out there, looked at the properties, talked to property managers, but I could not find a good property manager, at least one that I could work well with and that I could trust. Okay. And so I decided I'm not going to invest here. So I moved on. So that's absolutely, you did it absolutely right. So good for you.
Awesome. Thank you. I'm glad I did it right. So let me ask you, actually, before I ask you this next question, and this is a personal question that I want you to answer and help me with. But there was actually another situation. So let's just say, for example, someone's listening to this and like, oh my gosh, Scott, there's no way I could ever do that right now. And it's like, okay, it's okay. You can still do other things. There's this guy that I actually met it was funny how this all kind of just lined up though. It's just weird how it happens, right? I was at my daughter's volleyball practice and a guy came up and we just struck up a conversation. We started talking about Lake Norman and stuff. And he was like, oh, I own, or my father owned an RV park there. We're now converting it into Airbnb mini homes or what are they? Tiny homes. And so I'm like, interesting. And I go, actually, I'm doing a rehab right now. And he's like, oh, whereabouts? I told him. He's like, yeah, we're just down the way. He goes, I think they got enough for 75 or 100 units, right? For their RV park. So his father's had this. Now they've had the land, but what they've done is they've switched it up to where they're buying tiny homes for about 75 grand. They're dropping them on the property. They're already plumbed. They're already wired, right? All they got to do is just hook in. And now people are paying anywhere from $150 to $250 a night to stay in a tiny home because it's on the lake, right? So again, maybe you find something smaller and you can still do the same idea. But again, for me, the lake was the draw. And I looked at if I'm going to invest, I like that because number one, the property value generally is going to be higher and to me, it's a little bit safer in a sense because this is what I've been told. I don't know if I'm right or not, but just that the lake properties are generally the last to get hit if you had some type of dip. Don't know if that's right, but it makes it sense to me that there's limited amount of it, right? So because of that, it's more scarce and it just becomes a little bit more valuable. So I was thinking to myself, even if I didn't want to do another house at that level, I could do another one, just a smaller one, maybe make it really, maybe drop, I don't know, 20, 30,000 in it, get it up to speed. And then maybe you rent it out and maybe that mortgage on that place is $1,500 or $2,000, but you can get $250, $300 a night. Again, do the math. right? So again, that's what was kind of cranky. But if someone's listening, you don't have to go that big. Just understand that what we're really trying to do is build something externally, or take some of our money over here externally, and then have something that is being run without me or you, Dustin, being involved, to create that passive income in a sense, the best that you can.
Yeah. And I have a couple of thoughts. Number one, if you're going to invest in a mobile home park or something like this, where it's a tiny home park, which is it's definitely trendy. It's very in fad right now. I'm not sure if it'll stay or go. I'm not sure. I'm not saying good or bad at that. But one thing that if you're going to be investing in real estate, I would say you own the land. The land is what's important. And here's the reason why. When you value a house, just like your house that you're living in, you look at comparable sales and look at, say, okay, this similar type of house sold for this is what this should go for. If it's a mobile home, it is only valued of the land. Like if you're going to sell it, it's just the land, because it's not attached. It's not an improvement to the land. It's sitting on top. So just a quick thing. You want to own the mobile home park, the land. You don't want to own mobile homes. Mobile homes are depreciating assets. Homes are, physically attached. They're going to appreciate in value. And so that's what you want to go for. But along with that, absolutely. That's a great thing that I love about real estate. I love business in general. Like I'm a businessman. I love business, but I absolutely love real estate because for many different reasons. I'll remember the 6 reasons I already told you about, the reasons why, or how you make money in real estate. But at the same time, a lot of people, when they think about getting started investing in real estate, they might hear 1 or 2 people, hear a bad story, then hear a good story, then hear a bad story, and hear a good story. They might be thinking, well, this person did it this way. Let me try to do it that way. Or this person did this way. Let me try to do it that way. What's great about real estate is there's so many different ways to make money. So many different types of properties, so many different types of ways to make money, so many different ways to fund the deal. There's a gamut of different things. And that's what I love with my students, because I get students, just like I said at the very beginning, we want to see where you are currently and where you want to go. And we figure out, I help you to see at least 5 or 6 different steps to get there. And then you make the best decision. So there's so many different options, but most of us don't know these options unless we're actually working in the business. So you're absolutely right. I think that if you have just the desire, that's the first step, and then start learning and seeing where you want to go with your business. It is such a great thing to have, because all these businesses that I'm creating, it's just luxury now. Like my gym, it's just like, I like going to the gym. Let me go ahead and create a business. And I have, the reason why I'm building the gym is I saw the same business model in another state, and the guy's making like $20,000 a month. Nice. And he has, anyways, long story short, I'm like, man, I can make that money. Plus I could own real estate. Plus I could have other locations, all that good stuff. And so basically having a business with real estate allows me to continue to build more businesses.
Yeah. Okay. So let's turn this over to a little bit of a coaching call for you, that you can coach me. So and you and I talked a little bit about this, but I said to my wife, I go, you know what, like we got to let this run a year and see like how it feels, like a full run of it, and understand that the first year is always the slower year generally, because this year is building up reviews, just like anything. Like we're getting reviews, we're getting all positive reviews, which is another thing that their company does. Like they solicit for the reviews because they know how important they are. And so we're getting those and it's building up. And he told us this, he goes, you're not going to do as good your first year as your second and your third and your fourth. But now in my head, I'm like, this is beautiful, because now this is something that doesn't doesn't rely on me, right? And if something did happen to me, my wife has it, my family has it, right? That's a good thing to have. So in my head, I'm like, I want 5 of these, right? I want 5, man. That's what I'm shooting for, right? So, and then the other thing that I'm thinking too, and again, I was told this, and it got another way that you could leverage the property. And another thing that I was thinking, like in 5 years, I could turn around and say, this house number 1 has appreciated 200 grand. I can go take a refi on that for 200 grand. I can take that money and put it in my own account, and then the tenant's paying it back. It's technically a loan, right? So it's not necessarily profit at this point. And again, I'm not a tax advisor, legal advisor, none of that stuff, but that's how I'm thinking of it. I'm like, and then after you get done and you're to the 5th house, by that time, the first one's ready to do it again. So you can almost have, 100 grand coming in with just refi stuff that could bring money back into your life and maybe into another property or whatever. So, okay, that's kind of where my big vision is right now. Like over the next 5 to 6, 7 years, I'd like to do 3 to 5. How do I do it without having to take another couple $100 grand of my own money and invest in something like this? How do you go down that road?
So I'm going to definitely say that you're going down the absolute right track, as well as if and when you take a loan out, you are not taxed, because is not profit. It's just your own money that you're pulling out, but your tenants are paying it. I've done this.
Beautiful.
I've done this strategy so many times, literally taking money out of the property. I've even bundled properties together so I can pull even more money out to buy even bigger properties. I've done that so many times, and it's absolutely the best way to go because you're leveraging other people's money as opposed to your own. So here's a couple different things that I would suggest for you. Number one, every penny that unless you absolutely need it, every penny that this one property makes, do not spend it. Put it in a savings account. Somebody's going to be making 2.5%. But don't put it in a long-term CD because you want to have it liquid. But you want to save that money so that can then go into the next property. So let's say if you're making $10,000 a month, obviously fluctuates up and down, but we're just going to say round numbers. You're making $10,000 a month. Let's just say if you after some expenses come up, maybe you might have $100,000 saved from that one property, give or take. Even if we cut it in half and you had $50,000 saved, that's so much more for the next property. So that's one. Save every single penny that you can then put into. That's how I got my business so fast, or so big so fast, is because I saved every penny. The next thing that I want you to do is I want you to look at the equity that you have in your house and seeing how best you can utilize that. Now, it may be a home equity line of credit. It may be a cash out refinance, which, like I said, I've done that so many times. In fact, now I buy properties with cash, like a $150,000 property with cash, then fix it up, get it rented out, then cash or recash out refinance, pull all that money out and then buy another property. So I'm basically recycling that money over and over again. So those are two big things that you can do for the finances, the money to buy the next property. The next thing that I want you to do is I want you, even now, even though you're not ready to buy a property, every day, maybe every other day, whatever area, if you want to keep going in the same area, which sounds like a fantastic area, be watching listings. Now, what's going to happen is, and you've already know a little bit of the market because you've already owned a property there, but because you're going to be looking at the market in the area, like the exact area that you're in, it might take you maybe a week. And then after a week, you're going to know every single property and you're going to see, hey, the price went up, the price went down. Oh, here's a new property. Here's a new deal. So be looking at everything that's for sale on the MLS, which is the multiple listing service, everything that realtors would show you. Here's another thing that I want to give you. I also want you to be talking to the neighbors all around there and say, hey, I love this community. We love being here. My family comes here. I want to make sure that this community stays good. All the neighbors around say, if you or anybody else is looking to sell, I want to make sure this community stays up really, really high. I'd love to talk to you about it because I want to make sure this stays really, really good. I value your house. Your house is fantastic. Build them up, make sure that they feel like they're valued and you're going to take care of their legacy. Say, I would love to talk to you. No, not even like I'm going to buy it from you. I'd love to just talk to you and see if I can help you out in whatever way. And so you're getting more. Number one, you're having money, but number two, you're getting leads coming in because when you're ready to buy, you want to make sure that you have, like money wise, you want to make sure that you have leads coming in. But here's a great thing. I've even bought, not saying that in this area this would actually happen, but because like I said, there's so many different options to buying real estate. Because I'm an investor, people find me and I go out and tell everybody, like literally everybody, I tell, I'm an investor. I invest in real estate. And so people bring deals to me, ones that, they should be on the MLS and make a lot more money, but they bring it to me. And I say, I'll help you out. I don't gouge them or anything, but we make a good deal. We negotiate and we try to make sure it's a win-win-win. And then at the same time, I get a property that I could then, it's generational wealth passed down to my family. So does that make sense? Does that give you a good game plan for the next 5 years?
Yeah, no, it absolutely does. My question is on so taking the money that you're making on the property, it wouldn't be then wise to take that money and pay down the mortgage that's there currently?
I absolutely would not. Well, your risk tolerance is like I have one fellow, a friend of mine, his investor. He actually owns a conference. One of the owners of podcast movement. You probably heard of it. Yeah. But his wife wants to make sure that their house is paid off. Like that. Once they do that, then they feel comfortable, and they can then move on and buy another property. There are other people that my risk tolerance is different than my wife. My wife was like, let's get rid of all the debt. And long story short, I believe there's good debt and bad debt. Good debt is what's going to help you to buy more properties. See, now, if you take that let's round it up. You make $100,000 this month or this year, which would be fantastic. I'm super excited. I hope you do that. Yeah. Even if it's half, let's just shoot for $50,000. If you make $50,000 in this 1 year and put it towards the mortgage, then that's $50,000 less that you can't put into another property. So every penny that you go towards paying down the debt, it might be good because your equity gets, your principal goes down, so you have more equity, but you have to tap into that and pull it out. But here's what I'm looking at right now. I have a savings account, gives me like 2.5%, Well, interest rates right now that if I'm borrowing money is like 4.5%. So I'm only paying like 2%, which it's ready for me to jump on a new property. But here's the big thing. My tenants are paying all that. So if you spend that money on the mortgage, that's your risk tolerance, then absolutely do that. But what I've done and how I built my business so fast, it took all that money, then bought into another property. The great thing is the first property is already paying all that interest, all that principal, everything. You save that money. You put it in the next property. That next property is going to do the exact same thing. Then you refinance one or two. You buy that third property. Honestly, Scott, if you think you're in 5 years, you can get to 5 properties in 5 years, it probably would be 3 years if you did this route, because you're using other people's money, you're saving your money, you're putting it towards this, and in the end, you're going to have 5 different properties in a faster time frame because you don't have to put up your own money to get it. You're basically using tenants' money, using banks' money, and buying properties and making even more money.
How is it when you're going to get that those new loans, those new mortgages? Like if they're
what do you mean how?
Like, well, when you're doing that now, they're looking at also, yes, you have this piece of property and it's producing, but you're leveraged for more. So now you go to the next one and they're like, well, wait a minute, buddy. Like if this fails, we're on the hook now. You got to pay those guys and these guys. How does that come into play? Because the more I would think, the more that you would get that you're on the line for would make your chances of getting a loan harder.
So in most banks allow you to have four loans in your name.
Okay.
And if the government itself, like the IRS says, you can have 10 loans in your name, but some banks have different criteria. So there's ways to work around it. Sure. And that's something that you have to work with each individual bank. But what I would do now is whoever the bank you talk to, I would go back to them. And if they can't do it, then go back to, there's so many banks, there's so many brokers. So there's so many different ways to do it. So find somebody that can actually get the job done. Okay. Now, what you're talking about is the debt to income ratio. Basically, how much debt do you have and how much it costs out of your pocket and how much income you have. Now, what's great is you have income that is coming in from this one property. Right. Now, they're going to say, hey, debt to income ratio. Okay, well, you're making this much, you're spending this much, you have a lot of money coming in. So what it really comes down to is every single bank has different underwriting criteria. One might say your debt to income needs to be at most like 55% debt to income, or another one might be 45. So a lot of different banks, they all do it differently. It's whenever their bankers have said this is what you should do. Sure. But what you need to do is if you get a no someplace, that's just the next door to hopefully get a next yes. And so you just keep finding other banks. But because you have income coming from this one property, because you have your business, because of all that, you're going to see, okay, I have this much income, I have this much debt. Yes, we're willing to lend to you because you're valid. Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, it does. And I guess not looking at like the property because that property is going to be able to show a good solid revenue stream when if I was doing the lower income properties where I was only making $250 a month, maybe it would be something, but it wouldn't be that substantial. So that could
absolutely. And it all comes down to what the underwriting from the banks. Yeah. Basically what they say is it okay? Do we feel comfortable? Or do we have enough risk tolerance to lend to Scott or somebody else? And like I said, in this business, it's just more about who you know and who knows you. And so I go to at least 3 or 4 banks until I find one that actually can get the job done.
Yeah, no, I love that. And speaking of like paying off your home, like I've thought of that. My home is mostly paid off. But when I came here, it was like the rates were like 3, not even 3.25%. And so I'm like, why would I ever pay that off? It's almost like free money. Like if I pay it off, then I got money that's locked up in a property that I'd have to, do a line of credit or pull or whatever. Like, so I don't know. That's a mindset shift, I think, for a lot of people too, because you feel like, oh, my house is paid for, I'm safe. But in the same breath, it's like, if you have that kind of money sitting over here, well, if you did have a rainy day, then you can pay it off over there or you have it invested. But that's a whole nother discussion. But yeah, it's almost like free money.
It is. And inflation itself is usually 3%. Right. So it's just lying still for you. So yeah. I've refinanced my personal property many, many times. So when the equity goes up or, just the market goes up or whatever it might be, I'll pull that money out. So here's to give you one specific example. So I pulled out, I think like $80,000 out of my property once. And I think the increase in interest or like total payments interest and principal was like $300. Well, with the 80 grand, I turned around, I bought, I think 3 different properties. That first property paid for that increase, like my profit of, $250 or more, paid for that increase. And then I bought 2 more properties that was all passive income. So leveraging other people's money and you leveraging the properties that you currently have. I've even bundled, like I said, 4 or 5 properties all in one to then buy another property. Now, is your risk tolerance, it's a little more advanced strategies, which I, definitely get into with all my students, but there's so many different options that if we want to get there, we absolutely can.
No, that's great. Good stuff, man. I could talk about this stuff for days because I'm just intrigued by it. I'm excited about it. Still, I mean, hey, I'm not going to lie. I'm still like nervous about it. Like who wouldn't be, right? It's like, you just say to yourself, well, what if it doesn't rent for 4 months in a row? But looking at the track record of what he's done in the area that it is, I think we're going to be okay. And worst case, the safety net is I could just bail and sell the thing, right? One last question. And this is a little, again, my own personal question, and other people might have this question. How soon after would you ever think about refining that property? It's like, so my property right now.
So, your resident, you're currently living?
No, not the residence, the rental.
It's when there's 2 different things, the amount of equity that is in the property and then the need at the time. Okay. So, I mean, you can even do just a home equity line of credit where you'll be able to tap into the equity whenever you have it. So you had a bank beforehand. It's basically like a credit card where your house is the credit line. And so you can, tap into the credit and pull it out to buy another property. What I usually do is cash out. So now, if you're ready to buy now and you have maybe $200,000 in equity right now that you can tap out. Now, banks would only normally give 75% to 80% of the total value of the home. So if it's $1 million home, you go and pull out $800,000. That's including paying off your first mortgage if you're refinancing. So you mortgage number 1, mortgage number 2. You got to pay off mortgage number 1 in order to get mortgage number 2 with the cash out. So you just need to have that. All that in mind. Like I have a property that I want to get, and then this is the equity that I have. How much money can I pull out of the property? If it's feasible and I can actually do that, then great. I can go ahead and pull it out and put it in that property.
Right. And then at that point too, you'd be looking at like by pulling this, how much did my payment go up? Or maybe it stayed the same because the interest rate had dropped or whatever. You might be surprised, or you might say, okay, I'm willing to increase my payment to whatever, maybe it's an extra $200, $300 a month, but that's going to allow you to buy that other property or, that other thing that you're trying to do.
And that's another huge thing about what I love about real estate. So I've had many businesses, and in other businesses, there's so many variable expenses inside of real estate. Just about everything is a fixed expense that you can account for before. Like you have your income and your expenses. They might rarely ever change. But there is one thing that I wanted to touch on that I forgot about until now. You mentioned that certain districts don't allow Airbnb, certain or VRB or like the short-term rentals, certain areas. But also so definitely you need to talk to your property manager. The property manager are going to be the ones that are going to tell you in whatever city, whatever state, they know the laws. But here's another thing. I brought on somebody onto my podcast and they were sharing their experience. So their first rental property, they bought in Las Vegas and they didn't read the HOA rules well enough. That it literally says no rentals. You cannot rent the property. So he's stuck. He bought the property. He can't rent it out. And that's what he was going to do with it. So he had to sell it. I think he maybe just a wash and then bought a property like, a block away. And then he rents that one out. So you definitely need to do your due diligence. And that's something that I love to do is helping as being a coach, helping people is showing them, hey, there's so many different not just how to do it, but all the pitfalls that can come with it as well.
Yeah, no, that's a big one. And that's a lesson I'm sure he learned pretty quickly.
Oh, definitely.
Never going to make that mistake again, right?
No, not at all.
Yeah, hopefully he washed his hands of that deal and learned his lesson, licked his wounds and moved on because that's a tough one. But I actually had something similar to that, with rentals, but even just with a trademark. I thought like when you buy a domain name, I'm going back like probably like 8-9 years ago, bought a domain. I'm like, oh, it's on the registry for domains. It must be fine, trademark free. And then a year later, after I've built this business and I got some momentum and I branded things, I got a phone call and a letter saying, you're violating a trademark and we're either going to sue you or you're going to take it down. And so I worked out a deal with them. They actually let me direct all the traffic that I had built going towards a new domain. They were cool about it, but I learned my lesson. Just because it's on GoDaddy does not mean that it's trademark free. So do your homework. Do your homework.
In fact, it could be even the opposite way. Whereas if you buy a domain, and I've even seen this, where if you buy a domain, let's say Coca-Cola.com, and Coca-Cola is the brand, they could come after you and say, "This is ours. Give it to us."
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. So yeah, you gotta be careful. But all right, so how can people get in touch with you or learn more about this if they're interested in doing any investing, whether it's small, whether it's big? How do they get in touch with you? How do they listen into your podcast? Give everybody the details.
Yeah, thanks. So I love talking about real estate, and not just real estate in general, but what it affords me. I can travel the world. I don't have to work. It's just great. But so I have a couple things for you. One, I'll give you a free course. So if anybody listening wants to have a free course, go to masterpassiveincome.com/free course. All one word, masterpassiveincome.com/free course. And I'll give you a free download to get you started, see if this is a route you want to go. But also masterpassiveincome.com is my website, and Master Passive Income is the podcast. So really just remember Master Passive Income. You should be able to find me. But I love talking about this. I love helping people. I was so blessed that I have so many properties. I don't have to work. And I love seeing my students actually get to that point where they don't have to work anymore. It's just a blessing to be a part of it. So yeah, go ahead and reach out to me. I'd love to talk to you about it.
Awesome. Dustin, this has been great. I love talking about this just in general. Just real estate is interesting to me. I don't think it's ever going to go anywhere. And there was one thing that actually, and I'm not a huge fan of Grant Cardone, the big real estate guy, but the one thing that he did say one time that stuck with me was, internet, stuff, online stuff can change. And, real estate can change, but everyone always is going to need a bed to sleep in. Right. So that's not really technology is never going to get rid of that. Right.
And I'll give you one more thing. So you've heard the term or the saying location. Mm-hmm. In my opinion, in my business, in real estate business, I scrap that. Like that's just bad advice for investors because everybody needs a place to live. So 100% right. Even if I get a big question from a lot of people saying, well, what happens if the market crashes? Or what happens if, prices come down? Well, I say, number one, I don't care. It is a bummer, but I still make passive income. Mm-hmm. They say, well, what happens if, won't rents come down? I said, well, what happens when the market crashes? People cannot pay their mortgage. Mm-hmm. What happens if they can't pay their mortgage? They get moved out of their home that they try to own. Then what happens to the pool of renters? The demand goes up for my property because there's more people, more supply of renters and less supply of property. So all that to say, it's a great way to do it. But here, when you brought up Grant Cardone, Grant Cardone, he's himself. Mm-hmm. I actually try to not be like Grant Cardone. Right. I get coaching students say, man, I listen to your podcast and I'm going to you as a coach because you're not like Grant Cardone. Right. And I said, you know what? Honestly, to me, it's a very good compliment. Thank you very much. But you're absolutely right.
Yeah. No. And I get that too. I mean, when you're in this space, you get compared to, we call them the Lambro guys, the guys that are showing the Lambros and exactly. The Lambos. And they're like, look at me. I just launched on Amazon with one product in 30 days. I've got a Lambo. Want one? Join my class, right? So yeah, I'm the same with you, man. So good time talking with you. And I'll give everything out in the show notes as well. But Dustin, I just want to say thanks again, man. We'll probably have to have you back on, do a little update, probably pick your brain a little bit more. And it'd be awesome to do that. But thanks again so much for coming on the show, man.
Anytime, Scott. Thank you very much for having me.
All right. Well, there you have it. A little bit of a deep dive, a little bit of a behind the scenes, like what I've been working on, some of the sticking points, some of the highlights, some of the things that I'm still not sure about moving forward. But you heard it here on this podcast. I've got a vision. I've got something that I want to achieve. I'm not sure if it's going to happen, but I would love to have 3 to 5 properties in the next 5 to 7 years. All right. Now that's going to take a little bit of work. It's going to take a little bit of capital. But I am going to take this first year with this one that I have, and we're going to see where it leads. But side note, I'm actually taking the same mindset, this same idea, and I am looking to build online real estate. And then from there, I'm going to get it up to at least $1,000 per month net income. That is the goal for these properties. And I'm looking at them as rental properties. And I want you to think about this. This is how I think. Now, if you've heard my story here, either here on the podcast or if you've read the book, The Take Action Effect, then you know my story. I came from the construction world. Well, I look at this like, okay, I can create and build, with workers, and I can build a piece of real estate that gets traffic that I can then monetize without me having to go out there and invest $100,000 or $200,000 in an Airbnb. So while I'm waiting for my next Airbnb and getting some capital up and where I can then leverage it and giving it a little bit of time to mature, why not take this same concept, this same principle, and build some online real estate? And then from there, let's say in 12 months, I can build a piece of property and get it to $1,000 net. Now, you heard Dustin, his goal is to invest in a piece of property and have it net $250 a month, right? And he might have to invest $20,000 or $30,000 or even $40,000 of his own money. What I'm looking to do is build these properties. I'm going to have a construction crew, if you will, and I'm going to go ahead and build these. Now, the cool thing is, and I'm not announcing it yet, but there's going to be a little bit of behind the scenes stuff that I'm going to be doing inside of a new program that I'm going to be doing here. And I'm not going to say too much, but this is how I'm thinking. This is what I'm doing because I want properties that are not dependent on me, Scott Voker. All right. And if you're interested in that, you're going to want to stay tuned because we're going to be talking more about that. And if you're ready to go into the Airbnb world, then definitely reach out to Dustin and pick his brain. Smart guy, great guy. I definitely recommend checking him out and all of his free resources out there. All right, guys. So this episode is 737. If you want to grab the show notes, transcripts, head over to theamazingseller.com/737. You can do it all over there on the blog, on the website. All right, guys, so that's it. That's going to wrap it up. As always, remember, I'm here for you. I believe in you, and I am rooting for you. But you have to, come on, say it with me, say it loud, say it proud. On the count of 3, let's do it together. 1, 2, 3, take action. Have an awesome, amazing day, and I'll see you right back here on the next episode.